In this gripping story, we dive deep into the life of Jeremy, a man who thought he had it all: a loving wife, a beautiful home, and a secure future. But beneath the surface, secrets festered, leading to a heart-wrenching discovery that would shatter his world. As Jeremy uncovers the betrayal of the one person he trusted most, he faces a choice that will forever alter the course of his life. Join us as we unravel a tale of love, deceit, and the devastating consequences of broken trust. This is a story you won't want to miss. What hurt Jeremy the most wasn't the thought of Jocelyn with another man. It was watching her get ready. She slipped into the black lace lingerie and stockings, then spent an eternity on her makeup and hair. The dress she finally put on was one he'd never seen before: sleek, low-cut, sexy. And those heels. The whole outfit screamed seduction, and it was for Matt Davis, not for him. Jeremy's gut twisted with betrayal, jealousy, and anger. She was making herself desirable for another man, while he was out there busting his hump to give her a good life, a beautiful home, a family. It was impossible to wrap his head around. Their sex life was fantastic. Jocelyn was always enthusiastic, always made him feel wanted, loved. He'd had zero reason to doubt her faithfulness. After 20 years of marriage, he thought he knew her inside and out. It never occurred to him that she'd cheat. Until that night a month ago, at her company dinner. Matt Davis, the managing partner at her law firm, had been all over Jocelyn, way more than Jeremy was comfortable with. But it was the smirk Matt gave him after dancing with Jocelyn that really set off alarm bells. Something about that look, it was predatory, possessive. Jeremy tried to brush it off, but he couldn't shake the bad feeling. He'd brought it up to Jocelyn the next day, but she'd gotten defensive, acting like he was overreacting. It only confirmed his suspicions. Now, all those late nights at the office, the cancelled lunches, the business trips, it all added up. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Jocelyn was Matt's personal assistant, the one person he trusted most. And Matt was a classic alpha male. Managing partner at a prestigious firm, flashy cars, expensive jewelry, a lavish lifestyle, and a trophy wife. He'd traded in his wife of 20 years for Sloane, a hot, 30-year-old blonde. Jeremy knew the type. The kind of guy who got off on putting other people down. He'd seen it firsthand, at a company picnic a few years back. Matt had made a crack about Jeremy's job. Selling nuts and bolts to hardware chains wasn't exactly glamorous, but it paid well. Well over $200,000 a year, enough to give Jocelyn and their daughter, Sarah, a comfortable life. He might not be a high-powered lawyer like Matt, but they were happy. Or so he'd thought. He'd given Jocelyn everything she'd ever wanted. He'd paid for Sarah's college tuition. She was a sophomore now, and they lived in a beautiful colonial in a quiet suburb with great schools and friendly neighbors. They had a comfortable life. Sure, he wasn't a millionaire like Matt, didn't have the same kind of power or influence, but they were happy. Or so he believed. That day at the picnic, Matt had sauntered over, a condescending grin on his face. "So, Jeremy, how's the nuts and bolts business? I bet you get screwed a lot. Must be fun working at Home Depot every day, huh?" The other lawyers chuckled. Jocelyn had laughed too, and Jeremy felt his blood boil. He turned and walked away without a word. To her credit, Jocelyn had followed him. "What's wrong, honey? You think that was funny? Him humiliating me like that, in front of everyone?" "Oh, baby, he's just messing around. Matt likes to have fun, you know? Don't take things so personally. Come on back, he's really a nice guy." Jeremy had stayed, against his better judgment. Looking back, he should have seen the warning signs. But he'd been blinded by trust, by the comfortable routine of their life. He understood why Matt was so appealing to others. He was the alpha male, the guy everyone wanted to be around, tall, good-looking, successful. And Jocelyn was his right hand, his trusted confidant. It all made sense now. Matt was the kind of guy who had to have it all, and that included other men's wives. Over the next week, Jeremy acted quickly. He had to know, one way or the other, if he was going crazy or if his gut was right. When the package arrived, 6 audio recorders and 5 video cameras, he started setting up his surveillance plan. The first camera went into the smoke detector in their bedroom ceiling. 2 more were strategically placed in the bedroom, capturing different angles. The other cameras went into the master bathroom and the living room. All of them had live feed capability, 8K resolution, and a wireless link to a dedicated server he'd set up in the attic. He could control everything remotely with an app on his phone. The audio recorders were even more discreet. One was hidden inside a decorative pan next to the kitchen phone. Another was tucked away in Jocelyn's car. The rest went into her 3 favorite purses and one behind the headboard of their bed. With this setup, he'd be able to capture almost every conversation, every move she made inside the house. He had a bad feeling about his upcoming business trip. The week of his sales trip, Jeremy's apprehension grew. As always, Jocelyn was affectionate, showering him with kisses and sweet talk. They made love that night, and just like every time he was about to leave on a trip, she told him how much she loved him, how much she'd miss him. Their intimacy was precious to him. Jocelyn had never let him down. He felt so close to her, so connected, that he almost convinced himself he was being ridiculous. She wouldn't cheat. Not Jocelyn. He almost dismantled the whole surveillance operation. But something held him back. Just in case, he left everything in place. This trip was for 2 nights, plenty of time, if anything was going on. He kissed Jocelyn goodbye and hit the road by 6 p.m., a 3-hour drive to the Holiday Inn in the next state. As he drove, he found himself replaying the last 6 months in his head, searching for clues. Matt's smirk, that stupid Home Depot comment, there wasn't anything concrete, just a gut feeling that something was off. He shook his head, forcing himself to relax. He was being paranoid. But when he got to the hotel, checked in, and fired up his laptop, that paranoia crept back. He settled into the king-size bed, clicked through his work emails, then opened the link to the server in his attic. He fast-forwarded through 3 hours of footage, expecting to see nothing but an empty house. Then he saw Jocelyn, in their bedroom, making a phone call. He slowed the playback to normal speed. He watched her stretch out on the bed, her hands slipping under the silk pajamas he'd bought her for their anniversary. The camera's audio picked up her side of the conversation. "Hi, sweetheart. He's gone. I'm all alone. Yes, 2 whole nights this time. When can you come over? Oh, your wife's out of town? That's great. Can you stay the night? I really want to wake up next to you. Of course, silly, I'm all yours. Yes, baby, my body belongs to you. What time will you be here? Okay, see you soon. Love you, too." Jeremy stared at the screen, his blood turning to ice. They'd just made love, passionate love, and she'd told him she loved him. Now, an hour later, she was inviting Matt over to spend the night. Who is this woman? How could she be so loving, so tender with him, and then turn around and do this? Over the next hour, he watched Jocelyn get ready for her lover. The shower, the lingerie, the makeup, the careful way she styled her hair. It was excruciating, watching her transform herself into the woman she never was for him. He'd always known she was beautiful, but in that moment, she was a vixen. Every move she made filled him with a mixture of pain and desire. The rage and jealousy were almost unbearable. She was doing all of this for Matt, not for him, her husband of 20 years. Part of him still couldn't believe it. Was Matt really coming over? Maybe this was all a misunderstanding, maybe he'd gotten it wrong. But a few minutes later, the doorbell rang. Jeremy watched as Matt Davis walked into his house, pulling Jocelyn into a rough kiss right in front of the camera. The close-up of their mouths, their tongues. Jeremy ran to the bathroom and threw up. "Wow, baby, you look amazing in that dress. I can't wait to rip it off you and make love to you all night." Matt's voice dripped with lust as he gave Jocelyn a once-over. Jocelyn giggled and took his hand, leading him upstairs to their bedroom. Jeremy wanted to smash the laptop, to scream, to cry. He watched helplessly as Jocelyn undressed Matt, his face a mixture of pain and disbelief. Matt was a big guy, muscular, with a six-pack and a cocky swagger. Jeremy felt a surge of jealousy, of rage, but also a grudging admiration. He's not even trying to hide it. And Jocelyn, she was like a woman possessed. She let Matt do things she'd always refused to do with Jeremy, claiming they were disgusting, that she'd never even considered them. Yet here she was, less than 10 minutes alone with this predator, and she was doing everything. Jeremy felt his head spinning, his stomach churning. He threw up again, this time into the wastebasket next to the bed. He watched, numb with pain, as they had sex. He knew, logically, that his marriage was over. He shouldn't care what they were doing, how they were doing it, but he couldn't tear his eyes away. It was the conversation afterward, as they lay tangled together in his bed, that really broke him. "So, the little cuckold's out of town for a couple of nights, good. You're all mine." Matt chuckled. "I'm so glad you can stay, babe. I've been wanting to wake up next to you for so long. I love being with you, Matt. I love taking you again and again all night long, while hubby's out there working his ass off. What an idiot. Don't be mean, Matt. I love him. He's a good man. Then why are you letting me do this to you? You're the sexiest man I've ever met. I love the way you make me feel. That's what I love about you, Jocelyn. It's more than just your body. You make me feel appreciated, desired. You give me more love and affection than my wife, than any other woman I've ever been with." Those words, they hit Jeremy like a punch to the gut. That love, that adoration, it was supposed to be his. He'd thought they shared something special, something unique. Now he knew, with a sickening certainty, that Jocelyn's love wasn't just for him anymore. He watched as they cuddled, kissed, and whispered sweet nothings. "Does Jeremy satisfy you like I do, Jocelyn? He's a wonderful lover. But, no, honey, not like you. You do things to me I can't even explain." Jeremy shut the laptop, unable to watch anymore. He sat there for a long time, overwhelmed by sadness, by a sense of loss so profound he felt like a part of him had died. Jeremy slammed the laptop shut, unable to bear another second of witnessing his wife's betrayal in his own home, in his own bed. Sleep evaded him for hours as anger and hurt battled for dominance. One thing was clear: pain and revenge were in his future. When he returned home, Jocelyn greeted him as if nothing had happened. Hugs, kisses, sweet whispers. It was all an act. Her touch, once so familiar and comforting, now filled him with revulsion. He flinched at her kisses, barely able to maintain the charade of normalcy. He gathered the audio recordings and video footage, making backup copies to a secure cloud server and encrypting a copy on his personal computer. For the next 2 weeks, he made sure he knew exactly where Jocelyn was every minute of the day. He kept her busy with errands, dinners with friends, anything to prevent another rendezvous with Matt. But Jocelyn was growing impatient. He overheard her talking to Matt on her drive to work one morning. "Why hasn't Jeremy gone out of town again? I need you, now." "I don't know, babe. But I'll find out. It should be soon, I promise." With that knowledge, Jeremy knew exactly what he had to do. He'd play along. He'd give Matt what he wanted: an empty house and a clear path to Jocelyn. That evening, as they were watching TV, Jocelyn snuggled closer. "Honey, when's your next trip?" she asked. Jeremy forced a smile. "Trying to get rid of me already? Got a hot date lined up?" he teased, trying to sound lighthearted. "Don't be silly. I love having you home. I was just hoping maybe your traveling was slowing down." She was a good actress, not a hint of guilt in her voice. "Sorry, sweetheart. Job still requires a lot of face-to-face meetings. But I do have another overnight coming up, next Tuesday. I'll be back Wednesday afternoon." "Oh." Jocelyn's voice was flat, but she quickly recovered. "Well, I hate it when you're gone. I wish you didn't have to travel so much. I miss you terribly." She kissed him then, a deep, lingering kiss, filled with the same passion, the same tenderness, that she'd shown Matt on the video. It took all of Jeremy's self-control not to shove her away, to scream at her, to demand the truth. He kept up the charade, knowing that Tuesday would be his night. Tuesday arrived. Jeremy packed his bag, then joined Jocelyn in the bedroom for one last time. After tonight, there would be no more us. She kissed him goodbye, and for a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. Or maybe it was just his imagination. Showtime. Instead of heading out of town, Jeremy drove back to his office at the industrial park. He parked his car and went back to his desk, pretending to work late. It wasn't unusual for him to burn the midnight oil, and the few other people in the building didn't question his presence. Around 7:30 p.m., the camera in his bedroom flickered to life. Matt was back, greeting Jocelyn with another possessive kiss. Jeremy reached for his phone, disabling the camera feed. He didn't want the phone's GPS to track his movements. He tucked the phone into his desk drawer, then slipped out of the office, heading for his car. He popped the trunk, pulling out the folding electric bike he'd bought a few weeks ago. The motor was almost silent, capable of speeds up to 30 miles an hour. He put on a black hoodie, making sure no one was watching, and set off. The bike was perfect for this, quiet, inconspicuous, and fast. It took him less than 20 minutes to reach their house. He parked the bike behind the garage, then slipped inside through the back door, which he'd rigged to stay unlocked. He stood silently in the kitchen, listening. The sounds coming from upstairs were unmistakable. He retrieved the short-barreled shotgun and aluminum bat he'd stashed in the hall closet, then crept toward the bedroom, adrenaline pumping through his veins. He placed the shotgun on the floor just outside the door, keeping the bat in his hand. Taking a deep breath, he eased the bedroom door open. Jocelyn and Matt were so engrossed in their activities they didn't hear him come in. He walked toward the bed, his heart pounding in his chest. Jocelyn was on her back, her legs wrapped around Matt's thick waist. Matt was on top of her, lost in his own pleasure, oblivious to the fury that was about to be unleashed. Jeremy didn't hesitate. He swung the bat with all his might, connecting with the side of Matt's head. The sickening thud of metal against bone was quickly drowned out by the thump of Matt's 250-pound body hitting the floor. Jeremy grabbed the shotgun as Matt slid off Jocelyn, his eyes flickering open in confusion. He flipped on the light switch. Jocelyn screamed, scrambling back against the headboard, her eyes wide with terror. "Oh God, no. Please, Jeremy, no. This can't be happening. Why are you here? You're supposed to be..." Her voice trailed off, her face ashen. "Yeah, why am I here, Jocelyn? Why are you screwing another man in my bed?" Jeremy's voice was low, dangerous. "Now shut the hell up and listen." Matt was slumped against the wall, blood streaming down his face from a 6-inch gash. He was regaining consciousness, his eyes focusing on Jeremy, who stood over him, shotgun in hand. That hurt. What the hell, man? Why'd you do that?" Matt's voice was thick with confusion and pain. "Are you kidding me? You're sleeping with my wife, in my bed, and you're asking why I hit you?" Jeremy's laughter was cold, humorless. "What are you going to do?" Matt's bravado was gone, replaced by fear. He glanced nervously at the shotgun. Jeremy pressed the barrel of the gun against Matt's chest, his eyes blazing with fury. "You scared now, Matt? Afraid it might hurt? You've been screwing me over for months, and tonight's payback time. I'm going to kill you, Matt. You're gonna die right here, right now, for what you did. Everything you've worked for, your fancy career, your trophy wife, gone. All for a piece of ass. Was it worth it, Matt? If you kill me, you'll go to jail. You'll spend the rest of your life behind bars." Jeremy laughed, a wild, unhinged sound. "Screw that. We're all dying tonight. How's that sound?" He was putting on a show, playing the role of the enraged husband, letting his anger fuel his words. He had no intention of actually killing anyone, but it felt good to see the fear in their eyes. Jocelyn was huddled on the bed, sobbing, trying to cover herself with the sheet. "Baby, please, don't do anything stupid. I love you. I really do. Put the gun down, let's talk about this." Jeremy's smile was cruel, menacing. He swung the gun toward Jocelyn. "Shut up. This is all your fault. You're the one who had to find another man, who had to cheat on me. Whatever happens tonight, you brought it on yourself. And look at your lover boy. He just pissed himself. Pathetic. You're nothing but a scared little boy, Matt. Maybe you should wear diapers." Jeremy was deliberately letting them see his madness, his loss of control. He could see the realization dawning in their eyes. They were in serious trouble. They had to calm him down, fast, or he really might kill them both. He'd loaded the shotgun with custom shells, 25% salt and 75% oleoresin capsicum, the active ingredient in pepper spray. He wasn't going to kill them, he was going to give them a night they'd never forget. Jeremy's intent wasn't to kill, but to inflict pain, the kind that would last a lifetime, a stark reminder of the consequences of their actions. He wouldn't go to jail, he wouldn't stain his hands with their blood. But he'd make sure they both lived with the terror of this night forever. Matt, finally recovering from the blow to his head, made a desperate lunge for the shotgun. Jeremy was ready for him. The moment Matt moved, he exposed himself, and Jeremy fired. The blast was deafening, but Matt's screams were even louder. The cloud of pepper spray filled the air, engulfing Matt's wounded groin. He gasped for breath, his eyes burning, his skin on fire. The pain was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Even Jeremy was shocked by the force of the blast, by the mangled flesh and blood. It was a less lethal round, but at that range, the impact was brutal. He let Matt writhe in agony for a few minutes, then gave him a swift kick to get his attention. His gaze was fixed on Jocelyn the whole time. "Listen up, both of you. I'm leaving in a few minutes. You," he pointed the shotgun at Jocelyn, "are going to get this loser to the before he bleeds out. And you're not calling 911. You drive him there yourself. Tell anyone who asks that you have no idea what happened, that you found him like this. And you will not mention my name. Got it?" Jocelyn nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "If either of you breathes a word about this, about the affair, about me, the video, the audio, the photos I have, they all go straight to Sloan. And to your partners at the firm, Matt. I've even set up a website, with every single second of your little home movies, ready to go viral. Think about it, Matt. How's your firm going to react to that? What about your wife? Your kids? Your friends?" Jeremy's voice was cold, emotionless. "I don't care what lies you come up with for the cops, but you will not involve me. And Matt, you're not firing Jocelyn. She's going to need that job once the divorce is final. If you even think about coming after me, if Jocelyn tries to fight the divorce, everything goes public. Got it?" He leaned closer, his voice a menacing whisper. "You both screwed me over. Now it's your turn to get screwed. Get him to the hospital, Jocelyn, before he loses any more blood. And don't forget what I said." Jeremy turned and walked out, leaving them both whimpering on the blood-stained sheets. He slipped out the back door, making sure it locked behind him. He stashed the bat and the shotgun in a duffel bag, slung it over his shoulder, and rode the bike back to his office. He tossed the weapons into the river, making sure to dispose of them in separate locations. He peeled off the surgical gloves he'd worn the whole time, tossing them into a trash can a few blocks away. By 9 p.m., he was back at his desk, just another late working employee. No one suspected a thing. His car had never left the parking lot. It was their word against his, and he had all the evidence. He said goodnight to a few IT guys who were still working late, then headed out of town, his real sales trip beginning only now. No one suspected he'd ever left the office. It was the perfect alibi. By the time Jeremy returned home the next afternoon, things had gone spectacularly sideways. Matt had been rushed into surgery, attempting to repair the damage to his manhood. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. A freak accident in the operating room, an exploding oxygen tank, they were saying, had destroyed both of Matt's testicles and further mangled what was left of his penis. The surgeons had done their best, but the damage was extensive. Matt was left with less than 4 inches of mangled flesh, a constant reminder of that night. He'd also suffered a concussion from the bat, requiring 18 stitches and leaving a shaved patch on his head. The story he told was that he'd been attacked outside Jocelyn's house, ambushed while carrying some work files. He couldn't remember anything else, no faces, no details. He'd stuck to his story, knowing that if he mentioned Jeremy or the affair, his career, his reputation, everything would go up in flames. Jocelyn was hysterical, but she held her tongue. All she'd say was that she'd heard the gunshot, found Matt lying outside, and driven him to the hospital herself, thinking there wasn't time to wait for an ambulance. Neither of them could explain why Matt was naked. Sloan, of course, didn't believe a word of it. Jeremy spent the afternoon dismantling his surveillance operation. The cameras and audio recorders were carefully packed away, the footage uploaded to an encrypted cloud server, and the equipment itself disposed of. All evidence of his involvement was gone. Jocelyn came home around 6 that evening to find Jeremy in the living room, nursing a glass of his good whiskey. He sat silently as she perched on the edge of the sofa, her face pale and drawn. He'd never seen her look so broken. For a fleeting moment, he almost felt sorry for her. Then she started to cry, the tears spilling down her cheeks as she tried to explain. "Jeremy, I know what you saw. It looks bad, but I wasn't in love with him. I know what I said, I know how it must have hurt, but you know me. After sex, I need a connection. I need to feel something. Those things I said to him, they were for you, I swear. Whenever you left, I hated being alone. Matt, he was just company. It became physical, but it was just sex. Please, you have to believe me." Jeremy stared at her, his jaw slack with disbelief. She was actually trying to claim she'd been thinking of him while she was with Matt. "Jocelyn, I heard everything. I'll never forget seeing you with him. I know you said those things were for me, but I can't help but believe they were for Matt. It's over. 20 years, gone, because of you, because of your boss. We'll both have to live with this for the rest of our lives. So, thank you for the pain, for the betrayal. I'll treasure it always." His voice was flat, devoid of emotion, but every word dripped with sarcasm. "What do we do now?" Jocelyn asked, her voice barely a whisper. "We're done, Jocelyn. I'll never understand why you did this, and I'll never be able to forgive you. But I'll keep my promise. Sarah and your parents will never know what you did. You can tell them whatever you want about why we're getting divorced, but don't try to make me the bad guy. If you do, I'll make sure everyone knows the truth. That you're nothing but a cheating whore." His voice hardened. "I'm putting the house up for sale. You need to find somewhere else to live. You're the one who messed this up, so you're the one who moves out. I'm not asking, that's what's going to happen. Just tell my lawyer where to send the divorce papers. Sign them, and don't try to fight me on anything. Or it'll get messy, for you and your boyfriend." "He's not my boyfriend. I don't love him. Can't we fix this? Please, Jeremy, I'll do anything. Just tell me what I need to do. I can't live without you. I never meant to hurt you, I never wanted to lose you. Jocelyn, if it had just been the sex, maybe we could have worked through it. Therapy, a separation, something. But when I saw you, when you let him," his voice cracked. "You told him you'd never do that for me. Remember? And you were willing to do things with him, things you wouldn't even consider with me. That was it. That's when I knew it was over. But what really killed me, Jocelyn, was how you gave him our love. You said those things, those words, they were meant for me. Hearing you say them to him, that's what destroyed us. I don't know if I'll ever get over it. You not only gave him your body, you gave him our intimacy, our love. And I can't forgive that. No, Jeremy, please. Don't do this. I'm so sorry. I'll never do it again, I promise." "It's too late, Jocelyn. I can't trust you anymore. And I sure as hell can't forget what you did. I'll never forgive you, and once the divorce is final, I never want to see you again. As for Matt, if he tries anything, if he even looks at me wrong, I'll ruin him. I'll destroy both of you, and I won't hesitate." Jocelyn spent the next several hours begging, pleading, promising to change, but Jeremy's heart was a stone. Jocelyn left the next morning, moving in with her parents until the house sold. Over the next week, the police questioned Jeremy, trying to get him to admit to assaulting Matt. He'd already lawyered up, and his attorney had made it clear, unless they had some actual evidence, Jeremy wasn't answering any more questions without a warrant. They had nothing, and Jeremy had a solid alibi. Eventually, the police gave up, chalking it up to a random act of violence, a botched burglary. Jocelyn and her family called, pleaded with him to reconsider, to forgive her, to give their marriage another chance. His in-laws assured him Jocelyn was heartbroken, that she truly loved him and couldn't live without him. They begged him to try counseling, anything to salvage their family. But Jeremy was done. He never returned their calls, never answered the door when they stopped by. He changed his phone number and cut off all contact. Yes, it hurts. Every fiber of his being ached for Jocelyn. But the memory of her betrayal, of how easily she'd given her love, her intimacy, to another man, was a wound that refused to heal. Jocelyn was 42 now, a single mother, living paycheck to paycheck in a tiny one-bedroom apartment. The comfortable life she'd once enjoyed was gone. Her family and Sarah had figured things out, and they weren't happy with her choices. They blamed her for the divorce, for throwing away a good marriage. She was completely alone. Matt, predictably, had chosen to save his own marriage. He treated her coldly at work, blaming her for his injuries, for the problems with Sloan. He couldn't bear to have her near him anymore, so he moved her to the admin department, a soul-crushing demotion disguised as a lateral transfer. The gossip mill churned, and soon everyone knew Jocelyn was one of Matt's girls, treated with disdain and pity. The job she'd once loved was now tedious and meaningless, with no hope of advancement. No friends, no husband, a family that shunned her, a career in shambles. Jocelyn spiraled into depression. She cried herself to sleep every night, her heart aching for Jeremy. The guilt and regret were a constant torment. Sarah tried to help, but nothing seemed to work. Jocelyn wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping, and she'd started drinking heavily. She'd given up, convinced that without Jeremy, she had nothing left to live for. Sarah reached out to her father, desperate for help. Jeremy's heart broke for his daughter, for Jocelyn, but he couldn't bring himself to forgive her. He never spoke to her again. As for Matt, well, Sloane had put two and two together. She'd made his life a living hell, banishing him to the guest room, flaunting her own affairs with younger men. She kept him around, of course, someone had to pay the bills. But their marriage was a sham. Matt would never have sex again, not with the mangled mess the doctors had managed to salvage. He'd lost all sensation, and the removal of his testicles had left him feeling empty. He was a shell of his former self, a bitter, broken man, forced to live with the consequences of his actions. His anger at Jeremy festered, and several months after the incident, he'd finally decided to get his revenge. Jeremy had been out with his buddies, enjoying a few beers after work, when three guys jumped him in the parking lot. They'd beaten him mercilessly, leaving him with broken ribs and 20 stitches. If his friends hadn't shown up, he was sure they would have killed him. He knew who was behind it. Matt was the only one who wanted him dead. 6 weeks later, once he'd recovered from his injuries, Jeremy made a call. "Mr. Davis, please," he said to the secretary. "I'm sorry, he's in a meeting. Can I take a message?" "Yes. Tell him to meet me at Le Petit Café across the street this Friday, at 1 o'clock. Alone." "I'm sorry, sir, I don't schedule Mr. Davis's appointments." "Just tell him. Write it down. 1 p.m. Friday, Le Petit Café. Be there. Alone. Jeremy. He'll know what it means." Friday at 1, Jeremy sat at a table facing the door. He watched as Matt walked in, his face pale, his eyes wary. "Sit down, Matt." "What the hell do you want?" Matt spat. Jeremy ignored him. "Thanks for coming. Your goons did a pretty good job on me, but unfortunately for you, they didn't finish the job." Jeremy smiled, a cold, menacing smile. "You didn't listen to my warning, Matt. You decided to come after me anyway. You forced my hand." He slid a folded piece of paper across the table. "That's a link to a website. It's set up just for you, Matt. Don't bother trying to take it down. It's hosted in Syria, with 3 backup servers in different locations. It's untraceable. Even if you somehow managed to find one, there's 0 chance you'd find the others. What I'm saying is, you're screwed, Matt. I own you." "What the hell is this?" Matt's voice was tight with anger. "It's the website address. Check it out when you get back to your office." I blurred Jocelyn's face out. "She's paid enough for your sins." "You son of a bitch. You think you can blackmail me? I'll..." "Take a look at the website first, Matt. Then think about how your precious law firm is going to react when they see those videos. Think about your wife, your kids, your friends. How are they going to feel seeing you screwing your assistant? I'm thinking of posting them on a few, more accessible websites, too. You know, the kind your friends and family might stumble across. Along with your name, your address, your phone number." Matt's face was turning purple with rage. "You've already ruined my life. I'll never be the same. Just stop this, or I swear to God, you'll disappear. You'll be sorry you ever messed with me." Jeremy leaned forward, his eyes cold and hard. "That's the whole point, Matt. That's why we're here. You took the most precious thing in my life, my wife, my marriage, 20 years, and you think you can just walk away? You're wrong. I'll take my chances with your goons, but you're gonna pay for what you did." Matt slumped back in his chair, defeated. Okay, just calm down. What do you want?" "2 things. Non-negotiable. 1, no more retaliation. No more threats. No more sending your thugs after me or anyone I care about. That includes Jocelyn. 2, you're going to deposit $1 million into this account by the end of the day Friday. If those funds aren't there by 9 o'clock Friday night, Well, let's just say you'll be making headlines. I know how much you're worth, Matt. I also know how much I could get if I sued you. Consider this a bargain. And if I agree, how do I know you won't go public anyway? Jeremy's smile was as sharp as a razor. You don't. You'll just have to trust me. He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. But I'll tell you this, Matt. If you don't do exactly what I say, that website goes live. Guaranteed. I'm a man of my word, Matt. But if you don't do this, well, that website will be the hottest thing on the internet by Saturday morning. If I do this, how do I know you won't just disappear? Matt's voice was barely a whisper. Jeremy shrugged. You don't, but you're out of options, Matt. By the way. He paused, a sly smile spreading across his face. You ever wonder how I found out about you and Jocelyn? Actually, yeah, I've been racking my brain about that. It was that company dinner. Remember? After you danced with Jocelyn, you gave me this smirk. Like you just scored the winning touchdown. That arrogant little smirk. It set off all kinds of alarms in my head. And that, Matt, was your downfall. His voice hardened. You were the cockiest bastard I'd ever met. And I hope you spend the rest of your life regretting what you did to my marriage. The money was transferred. Jeremy sold the colony, splitting the proceeds with Jocelyn. She'd have enough to live comfortably, as long as she kept working. Matt, true to his word, kept her employed, but they never crossed the line again. Jocelyn never remarried, rarely even dated. She lived with the pain she'd inflicted, the love she'd destroyed. She'd lost Jeremy, the only man she'd ever truly wanted, and she knew she had no one to blame but herself. Jocelyn died before her 50th birthday, a broken, lonely woman. Only Sarah was there to scatter her ashes. Jeremy kept working for a few more years, then retired to a quiet little beach town. He married again, a kind, gentle woman who brought him companionship and comfort. But he never forgot Jocelyn, never truly got over the loss of their love. They never spoke again, and he only heard about her from Sarah, who he adored. They talked almost every day, but Sarah rarely mentioned her mother, knowing how much it still hurt him. Jocelyn's death brought him sadness, but also a sense of closure. He could finally start to let go of the anger, the bitterness, that had poisoned him for so long. He was sitting in his favorite coffee shop this morning, sipping his latte, when he saw a quote on a chalkboard sign. We think we want sex. But it's not always about sex. It's the intimacy we crave. To be touched, looked at, admired, smiled at, laughed with. To feel safe. To feel like someone really gets you. That's what we all truly want. Jeremy smiled, a sad, wistful smile. He'd finally learned that lesson, but at what cost? As we reach the conclusion of Jeremy's story, we're left with a powerful reminder of the deep scars that betrayal can leave behind. Despite his efforts to move on, Jeremy's heart remains marked by the pain of lost love and broken trust. Jocelyn's tragic end serves as a cautionary tale of the consequences that come with choices made in moments of weakness. Jeremy's journey, filled with pain and revenge, ultimately brings him a bittersweet peace, but at what cost? The story leaves us pondering the true value of intimacy and trust in our relationships, and the price we pay when those are shattered. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey, one that reminds us all of the delicate nature of love and the lasting impact of our actions.